Gosh, I'm really nervous about telling this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway because, well, my friends and my family know, and I'm writing a book about it because it was a very long-winded experience. It started when I was 20. I was diagnosed as a bipolar schizophrenic when I was 20 years old. And I knew in my heart that the psychiatrist had got it wrong, but I didn't want to go and get a second opinion. First, it cost my money, cost my family so much money, and well, I thought maybe the second guy might say it as well. And I really, at that age, when you're 20, you just go these guys have just got it wrong. So what resulted from that was I lived for 21 years in 5 hours a day of seclusion, and that really affected personal relationships. Because of the anxiety of the diagnosis. I thought I could get over it on my own, and in the process I got very ill, became very spiritual, tried everything, and finally got over it about 8 years ago, which is awesome. The last 8 years have been great. There was a small little hiccup about 2 years ago. There was one small little thing that I still had to get over. But let's go back to the story. So the story is quite exciting. So I'd been living in Hawaii for 2 years. I was the South African windsurfing champion, and I started competing from the age of nine years old. And by the time I was 16, I was the world windsurfing junior champion. And then at 18, when I was in the army, I was South African senior, overall windsurfing champion. So I was in the army then, but I had to take 2 months AWOL, or 2 months absent without leave. So I had to leave the army to train so that I could win this championship that was so important coming up, which I did win, luckily. I just won it actually by a hair. And then it was that year that I met this guy Josh from Maui, Hawaii, and he was out there for a competition in Cape Town. And we were at a restaurant, and he told a whole group of us youngsters, young aspiring professional windsurfers, that whenever the waves got really big, he would take magic mushrooms. So I remember I stored it in the back of my mind because I knew it was pretty scary going out in big waves. I'd been out in some really hairy stuff in South Africa a couple of times, but I'd seen some videos of the guys in Maui, and I thought, how the hell do these guys do it? And then when I went to Hawaii, it was pretty crazy, and I was doing pretty well, but I couldn't understand how these guys were so good in big waves. In retrospect, it came down very much to equipment, actually. They had much better equipment. They could go much faster in bigger waves. That's besides the story. Yeah, that's another story. All right, so so nervous about telling this, but anyway, let me carry on. So I'd been competing now for 2 years on the tour. I'd had some hairy experiences in the army. I'd basics in infantry in Ladysmith. I'd seen a guy lose his marbles completely and just punch the wall, and blood running down the wall. And then I'd been competing for 2 years around the world, been to destinations all over the world, and was doing really well until I took these mushrooms in Maui and went to a competition in Portugal, and I didn't sleep for 8 or 9 whole days. There was a lot going on in my mind. I actually had a feeling like I needed to get home and look after my family. Nelson Mandela had just been released from prison, and there was talk of bloodshed in South Africa, mass bloodshed for the white people. And it wasn't just that. I just started getting a feeling a year before that being a professional windsurfer wasn't the right thing for me. And then when I took the magic mushrooms, and it was a large dose, a very, very big dose. We're talking a whole beer glass filled with fresh Kubenzi mushrooms. Kubenzi are the second strongest mushrooms, second highest. So the highest is something called mushrooms called penis envy, and then there's Kubenzi. They're very, very high in psilocybin, which puts your mind into this altered state. And I was very, very, very fit at the time. I was just about to leave. I'd been training like crazy for this competition in Portugal, and I've been doing really well up until then. I was getting some results in the top 10 of positions in the top 10, and I was even the first competition I went to was in Puerto Rico. I came 5th, and so I was confident that I was I was going to make it to the top, but I just had this feeling in the back of my mind that, and you know, my parents were going through financial difficulties at the time, and I was sponsored by Malibu Liqueur and 5FM, which was cool, but it wasn't really giving me enough money, so I was working on the side as well, illegally in Hawaii. I was doing that, you know, and just kind of throwing everything at it. But wow, the mushrooms just sent me for a loop. Hey, like I didn't sleep for 8 full days, and I swam out to sea, and eventually I got just injected, and I had sleep therapy. There's a lot more to the story, and that's going to be in the book. And then I came home to South Africa, and then I was so excited about seeing the psychiatrist that I didn't sleep the whole night before. And then on the way there, it was a 90-minute drive, so we're nearly there, and my dad said, you know, he's stopping for coffee. Do I want to have some coffee? And I hadn't had coffee for 2.5 years. So I said, yeah, I definitely need some coffee. I want it to be alert. So I had this sort of cup of coffee, and if anyone knows me, I'm quite ADD as it is. You know, my brain kind of, I battle to concentrate. I've always had that since high school. Even though I did well in school, I really battled to concentrate. So anyway, this coffee just made me sort of tell the psychiatrist my whole life story in rapid fire, just shooting it out, and he was just like nodding his head and writing down the paper, he wasn't giving me eyes, he was just writing down his paper, you know, and trying to bring me back to what happened in Portugal. Anyway, then he asked me a very important question. He said, do you ever get really down? So I said, yeah, of course I get really down, which in hindsight, that's kind of like a leading question. But anyway, so I said, yeah, of course I get really down. And then he put me on these tablets that had me staggering around for 2 days. So I looked up in the Merck manual, which is a manual of how to, like what tablets, it was basically a manual before Google, all right? And the tablets I was on was haloperidol and lithium, which is basically what you take if, and it said straight there, you have bipolar schizophrenia or psychosis. And I was just crushed. It was like a ton of bricks coming down on me that he had diagnosed me as psychotic. So I went back to him 3 months later, and I was like, yeah, okay. But I was off the tablets, and I thought, I'm going to fight this thing by myself. And so then I studied to be a chiropractor, but I had to live in seclusion for 5 hours a day, especially when I started studying, and then that really affected my interpersonal relationships. I had to start lying about why I was spending so much time in seclusion, which really affected my interpersonal relationships. Anyway, that's the first installment of this, and I'll carry on with it soon.